Good morning from the U.S. Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica, and welcome to Consular Conversations. My name is Camila, and I'm your host for today. We are going to take, of course, a few minutes to wait for people to join us. Remember to share our live stream if you are watching so that as many people can join us as possible. Today, I'm joined by our very special guest, our Consul General, as well as our current acting Deputy Chief of Mission for the Embassy, Mr. Scott Feakin. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Camila.
So we will talk about, of course, the consular side of things, but how has the acting Deputy Chief of Mission role gone for you here in Kingston?
It's been a great opportunity for me. Of course, we have a great team here at the Embassy, kind of across the board and focused on really strengthening the bilateral relationship that we have with Jamaica. We have a really great friend and a partner in Jamaica, and we're fortunate to have that here. But it's like, say, a great team, kind of learning a lot on the job, if you will. And, I feel like in the consular section, I know things pretty well, but I'm learning a lot as I go on a whole range of different activities and programs. And it's, interesting to me the number of programs that the embassy does do. In everything from USAID and support that we provide here in the country to education programs, and of course the close working relationship that we have with our Jamaican partners on law enforcement as well.
Of course, and we have had some of our partners in law enforcement here. Our regional security officer with hurricane preparedness. So we are very happy, of course, that you are the current acting Deputy Chief of Mission, but we do miss you in the consular section sometimes.
Well, I do come down to visit as often as I can, so.
So now that we've given a few minutes, let's get started. So once again, this is Consular Conversations. My name is Camila, and I am joined once again by our Consul General and Acting Deputy Chief of Mission, Mr. Scott Feakin. So as always, our audience has all of those consular related questions. Thank you, all of you who were sending us comments and questions in the promotions for our Consular Conversations today. They're definitely going to help to guide our conversation. So, Scott, if we can get just a general overview of the current consular section operating status.
Yeah, so thank you, Camila, and thank you to everyone for tuning into this morning. I think we're really at a transitional point in the consular section, and a point that I've been waiting for quite some time. We're getting to more of a normal pace of operations in the consular section. We're providing the full range of consular services, and that hasn't been true for quite some time since the beginning of COVID. So we're providing American citizen services, we're providing immigrant visa services, we're providing even routine non-immigrant visa services, and then we're also doing our fraud prevention work as we always do in conjunction with all of those activities. Now, that being said, although we're providing that full range of services, many of those services are in very limited capacities, and that's due to resource constraints that we have here at Post, but also due to the ongoing challenges that we face with COVID here in Jamaica. Simply put, in the past, before COVID, we would line literally hundreds of people up out on the sidewalk on Old Hope Road to come into the embassy for their services. And due to social distancing needs and due to the continued risks of COVID, we're simply not able to do that. The system we had before was very efficient, and we could get, literally hundreds of people through each day. We're simply not able to do that right now. We're looking forward to a time when that is possible, but it's, going to be some time away. What that does mean, kind of, as I said, we're providing services in all of our sections within the consular section. But again, at limited levels, that means we have wait times for many of our services right now. We are working as quickly as we can to bring those wait times down, but it's going to be some time before some of those wait times will see significant improvements.
Great. So I know a lot of people were waiting for us to say that we are once again offering the full range of our services. But as Scott said, we are offering the full range, but they are at limited capacity still.
Right.
So Scott, I think the best thing that we can do is just go over each section individually,
Sure.
Talk about our previous status and now how we're going to operate going forward.
Sure.
So let's start with the non-immigrant visas.
So non-immigrant visas, I know there's a lot of interest on that front. Right now, our focus is to handle all of the regularly scheduled appointments that are in our system. So that includes some B1, B2 visa availability. It includes student visas, and we're seeing lots of students coming in right now. We're handling exchange visitor visas, and then other temporary employment visas and others kind of more specialized categories as well. As you're going to hear me say this again and again, for all these cases, it's in much smaller capacities than what we would historically do. But we're working to expand capacities as we have the resources and as the local circumstances warrant. We will provide additional availability into the system. That being said, right now for B1, B2 tourist visa appointments, our wait time is well over 1 year. I think it's about 15 months right now. We know that that's a very long wait time. Now, some of the things that we're doing on that front is there have been expanded capacity or expanded authorities that we have to process some categories via our interview waiver program. So, for example, H2 visas, temporary employment visas, we're able to handle those without people actually coming in for an interview. We're processing those cases administratively. The Department of State has also extended authorities to approve or to handle tourist visa renewals. So visas that have expired within the last 48 months, so the last 4 years, if you've had a tourist visa before, in many cases, you would be eligible to process that renewal through the interview waiver program. There's a lot of demand for that, quite frankly, and we literally have hundreds of those cases that we're working on right now. We're working to turn those around in about a month or so, depending upon kind of where we're at any given time. So what I would really advise people for non-immigrant visas is to plan ahead. If you have travel plans coming up over the next few months, if you're able to avail yourself of the interview waiver program for your visa category, you can do that through the website when you're scheduling your appointment. There's a list of questions that will come up, and just be sure that you're answering those questions correctly. What we've oftentimes found is people who are able to use the interview waiver process, but for whatever reason, they've answered questions incorrectly, and it puts them into a separate queue in which they're then potentially waiting for over a year for that visa appointment. So we're making some progress there, but again, it's going to be kind of a long time before we see us return back to the short wait times we had prior to COVID. Perfect.
So now moving on to the immigrant visa section, I see a lot of you are sending in immigrant visa questions. Keep sending those in. We'll get to those. Our immigrant visa status.
Yeah, so on immigrant visas, first of all, I want to let folks know that our priority categories in our consular services are American citizen services and immigrant visas. So we are devoting a lot of resources on both of those fronts to work to bring those wait times down. For immigrant visas, obviously, we had the challenges of COVID in conjunction with presidential proclamations. So our focus over the last few months has been working to get those cases in through our queue, get interviews done, and we're working on that. As we have the capacity to do so, we'll open up additional appointments for people who are documentarily qualified. So their cases sitting at the National Visa Center and just waiting for us to schedule those cases. Keep in mind that really for over the last year, we've not handled significant numbers of immigrant visa cases. We've handled cases as we could. We've certainly handled emergency cases as needed, but we have essentially 1 year's worth of cases that we need to work through, and we still have cases coming into our queue. So our plan is sometime by late 2022 to be fully current on our immigrant visa caseload. But it's going to take a long-term commitment on our part and patience on everyone else's part for us to get there.
Yes, of course. And as you said, American Citizen Services is also among one of the services that we have to prioritize. So what services-wise we're doing on the ACS front?
Yeah, so in American Citizen Services, first of all, we continue to provide emergency services to American citizens regardless. Even throughout COVID, we continued to answer the phones and handle emergency cases. One of the things that we're seeing right now is we're seeing more Americans come down to visit Jamaica, and I can certainly understand why. Over the weekend, I had the chance to go to Montego Bay and spend a little time up there. So I can understand the draw for American tourists down here in Jamaica. So we continue to provide emergency services. We also are providing our citizenship services. We're working to expand our capacity for citizenship services, so passport appointments, consular reports of birth abroad. And, we're working right now, I think our wait time is about 6 weeks or so. We're working to bring that down a little bit as we devote some additional resources to that. One of the great things, if COVID has done anything, it's really required the Department of State to innovate in a number of different ways. And one of those areas for American citizens is here in Kingston, we're able to process passport renewals using pay.gov. So as opposed to coming into the embassy and seeing us, although I don't know why people wouldn't want to come see us, but people can go ahead and they can pay the passport fees online. They can send the passport to us via courier service, and we process those cases administratively, those passport renewals administratively, and then send the passport back to people. So we're seeing a number of these innovations, and we hope to continue to see innovations like that. So, passport renewal without people having to come in. I've talked before about, processing H-2 visas through interview waiver. We've expanded authorities to process tourist visa cases through interview waiver as well. The other thing on immigrant visas, one of the things that the Department of State has done is it has extended the validity for police certificates. So in the past, police certificates were only valid for 1 year, if I remember correctly. They're now valid for 2 years. So we're trying to reduce the burden on our applicants, make things easier for them, at the same time making it somewhat easier for us and really to leverage the efficiencies that we have in our back office processes to get to cases as quickly as possible.
Yes, of course. And of course, for more information on pay.gov, make sure you look at our last Consular Conversations with Des. She also explained during that Consular Conversations that it is possible for a U.S. citizen to fly on an expired passport as long as it is just a one-way trip and that passport is then renewed in the United States. So I think it's time to get to some questions.
Sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
All righty. So Janelle and Zeddy are asking if immigrant visas are being processed, I think in general. So we've talked about it before. I know, especially during some of the presidential proclamations, we were limited to the category of visa that we were processing. But I think it's safe to say that we are processing all of the categories. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for your question, Janelle. Thank you for tuning in. We're processing the full range of immigrant visa cases. For example, on K1 visas, we're making appointment availability out there. And people are able to go ahead and avail themselves of those appointments, and really across the board. We're in regular communication with our immigrant visa applicants. And in many cases, we can, even throughout COVID, we were going through case files, letting people know if they need to update documents or if we're missing documents. So we continue to do that. The main thing I would advise our immigrant visa applicants, and this is for all the visa categories, we are reaching out regularly for information. If we reach out, please respond as quickly as you can. If you have specific questions on your case, don't hesitate to email us at kingstoniv@state.gov, and we'll do our best to respond to you as quickly as possible. Keep in mind, again, we have a lot of demand for all of our services, including for information, so it may take us a little bit of time to get back to you, but we will get back to you. And again, we're working through all those immigrant visa categories.
Yes, and as a reminder for K visas, if you all saw in our article that went out in the Observer today, you do have to schedule your own K appointment visa. Okay, that is done through usvisa-info.com. So please make sure that you schedule your K1 visa appointment because there are slots available. We're just waiting for you guys to come and interview. So let's see. NIV side, Raheem and Patrick are both asking for H2 applications. When will they be doing in-person interviews?
Yeah, so Raheem and Patrick, again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your question on H2 visas. H2 visas has been a mission critical category for us. We've worked to turn those cases around as quickly as possible. And in most cases, we're able to do that through an interview waiver process, as I mentioned before. Some cases do require an interview. Unfortunately, the queue for those interviews is quite long. So I would encourage people who need to schedule an appointment for an interview on their case to go ahead and keep checking our appointment systems to see for that availability. Again, we only have limited capacity to do in-person interviews for non-immigrant visas, including for this category. So we'll work to get to you as quickly as possible, but it may be some time, unfortunately.
Yes, and I know in the past, especially over the past year, a lot of non-immigrant visas have been canceled. Those appointments have been canceled. Yes. But I think we can say moving forward, as resources permit, we are trying to make sure that the appointments that are currently scheduled do not get canceled.
Exactly. And that's kind of our focus right now. And again, kind of at this transition point is to make sure that we're handling all the appointments that are on the books for us, trying to avoid any further cancellations. And I know we've had to make lots of cancellations over the last year, but I think we're moving in the right direction. Again, as we get additional resources, we'll work to put more appointments into our queue.
Definitely. So Chantel is asking an immigrant visa question, of course, one of our favorites. Yeah. When a case becomes documentarily qualified, when is it that they can expect an interview?
So it's a tough question to answer, Chantil. It really depends upon the category that you're applying for. Again, we're working to add capacity to our immigrant visa unit. We're devoting additional officers to scheduling appointments and handling those in-person interviews. So I can't give you a set time. Again, I would encourage you to reach out to Kingston IV at state.gov, and they can probably give you some specific answers on your case. But again, as I mentioned before, we have this 1-year backlog of cases that we need to work through, and we're trying to work through those as quickly as possible. At the same time, try and stay on top of the cases that are coming in at the same time. So it's going to be a tough road. Again, our plan is with resources that we have on tap right now to get through in our backlog and be current by sometime in late 2022. We've explained our situation to Washington. And just one of the things to let folks know, our situation in Kingston is very similar to the situation in consular sections all over the world. Yeah. This has been a global pandemic and has had, profound impacts all over the world. And so I know we're dealing with lengthy wait times here, but again, in talking with my colleagues at other posts in other countries, they're dealing with very similar situations, if not worse situations. So we're doing our best. Again, we're keeping Washington informed of where we are at and what we perceive our resource needs to be. And, as situations improve, as we're able to get additional resources, we will devote those resources to handling people's cases.
And of course, we thank all of you for your patience.
Yes.
We know that it has been a very hard and a very long year. I think all of us can agree that is true. So thank you for your patience. And as Scott said before, if you have any questions on your particular case, please don't feel free to reach out to us at Kingston IV at state.gov. So Scott, before we get to some questions, a lot of people are making some great suggestions about doing appointments virtually. But you and I both know, unfortunately, that's actually not an option. So can we just go over why that isn't possible?
Yeah. So this question comes up often. Why don't we just do appointments via a Zoom call or something like that? U.S. immigration law is very complex and very technical. And there are legal reasons for why we have to do an in-person interview. I know that this regularly receives review back in Washington, D.C. I know that our lawyers back in the Bureau of Consular Affairs within the State Department have looked at this in a number of different ways and in some various contexts. But the reality is, as things stand right now with the way the law is written, and the laws can change, but the way the law is written right now, we are simply not able to do that. Certainly if circumstances change, if Congress changes the law, then we may have some expanded authorities to do that. I will say, as I mentioned before, I think we've seen a lot of innovations in how we do things just within the last year. There are things that I thought for years and years we would never be able to do, and we're suddenly able to do. And one of those things is leveraging and using technology in ways that we never did before. We've had many of our staff, even within the consular section, who've teleworked, for example, over the past year. And, I come from an old school where I just always thought you had to come into the office each and every day. But we were able to get a lot of work done, people working remotely. And that's not just, true here at the embassy. It's true all over the world in private businesses and government, and even here in Jamaica.
Yes, of course. So back to some questions. We are getting a lot of non-immigrant visa questions.
Sure.
So let's see. Anne-Marie from the Cayman Islands is asking if Cayman Island visa renewals are being processed through interview waiver.
Yes, they are. Yeah, so you can go through the process. I think there's information on our website specifically for Caymanian citizens on that renewal process. So I'd encourage people to check out the website, and then they should be able to go ahead and renew their visa that way. Keep in mind that, as I mentioned before, we have a lot of people who are applying to renew visas through this expanded authority for interview waiver. So it's taking us a little longer than it might have in the past to turn those cases around. But we're working to get to those cases as quickly as possible.
Yep. And I think feeding into the next question, Angel and others are asking, how the interview waiver works.
Sure.
So the best resource you have is the actual website where you can apply for your B1, B2 interview waiver. That is usvisa-info.com. So as long as you answer the questions correctly, you should be able to be processed interview waiver.
Exactly. So when you go onto the website that Camila just mentioned, you can it'll basically take you through a decision tree. It'll ask you questions, have you had a visa before? When was that last visa issued? How old were you at the time the visa was issued? And then a number of other questions. And just be sure that you answer all of those, correctly based on your individual circumstances. And the system decides whether or not you would qualify for the interview waiver process. And if you do, then it will give you instructions on how to courier in your passport to us for processing. In terms of the mechanics of the interview waiver process, I think everyone's pretty familiar with how we do actual in-person interviews. Where the person comes into the embassy, they talk to one of our consular officers at an interview window, and we ask questions about the purpose of travel and what kind of vocation they have here in Jamaica, and things like that. The interview waiver process is a little different. Obviously, we're looking at the online application that a person has submitted. We're looking at their travel history. Those types of things to make a decision as to whether or not a person qualifies for renewal of their visa.
Yes, and as we have said many times, you can fill out that application on your own.
Yep.
It's not a hard application to do. So if you feel comfortable and confident doing it yourself, please go ahead and do so. And it gives you all of the instructions on how to send it in via courier.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's see. Simone is asking for NIV. Is the U.S. Embassy processing J visas?
Yes, we are processing J visas. We made a really big push kind of late spring, early summer to turn those J visa cases around. Now, I will say, due to kind of some of our resource limitations and some of the other challenges that we've talked about related to the pandemic, we've not been able to get through as many cases as we historically would, but we are processing J visas. Again, we've processed very large numbers of J visa cases. If you believe your case is worthy of an expedite, you can request an expedite. And again, that's done through our appointment system, and they can request an expedited appointment, explain their individual circumstances, and we'll review that and take a look at it and see if it qualifies for expedited service.
Alrighty, so we are almost out of time, but Philippa does have an IV question that I think we should address. She's talking about her medical exam expiration date.
Oh, okay.
If it expires before the visa is issued, does it have to be redone?
If it expires before the visa is issued, then yes, it would have to be redone. And Camila's nodding her head. Yes, Scott, you got that one right. So
yes,
I'm glad. But yes, so basically all of your documentation has to be current at the time the visa is issued and through the validity of that visa.
Yes, and as Scott said, your medical is tied to the validity of your visa. So if you do not have a valid medical, we cannot even issue you an immigrant visa. So if you see that your medical exam is going to expire soon, reach out to us and we'll let you know if we suggest that you do another medical exam. Okay. And I'm just going to sneak in one more IV question.
Let's do it.
Do we have any idea when we will accept those documentarily qualified applications from NVC?
Yeah, so again, kind of a tough question to answer. Right now, as I mentioned before, we're devoting additional resources. This is really one of the big priorities for the Bureau of Consular Affairs. We want to be able to reunite families as quickly as possible. So I can't give you kind of a set time other than to say, you know, we're working to ramp up our capacity in immigrant visas over the next few months. And I think we'll be making some real significant progress even by this fall in terms of where we're at in immigrant visas. So you know, especially not knowing the specifics, I can't give you a set time frame, but we're working to essentially process twice as many immigrant visas as we did previously.
Okay, Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, again, I just want to thank everyone for their patience and understanding. I know this last year has been very difficult for everyone, and we're not out of it. I think sometimes that's something we need to remember, that there are many people here in Jamaica and really throughout the world that are struggling with the challenges of COVID. We are doing what we can in the consular section to help in terms of the services we're providing. Again, I feel like we are at a transition point where we're doing all of the services that we provided before, albeit at lesser levels. And as we get additional resources, as local circumstances warrant, we'll work to expand our capacity to do so.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott.
All right,
thank you all of you for tuning in. Also on the Consular Conversations team side, I want to give a very, very special thank you and farewell to our beautiful Des. This is the last time she will be helping us with our Consular Conversations. Thank you so much for everything you do. And of course, join us next time for Consular Conversations. Thank you so much for